As you guys know, we have gotten a bunch of teasers for Call of Duty Black Ops 6, and with the reveal right around the corner, one of them that we got happened to be Sergeant Frank Woods in a wheelchair. This told us that everything that we have seen so far in every Black Ops game has been canon. What this means is that all of the Black Ops games and some of the stuff slightly outside of the Black Ops games will be involved in the story in Black Ops 6. And there's a lot of it. These videos take a long time to put together, so if you do enjoy it, I don't normally do this at the beginning of a video, but if you enjoy this video, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button. It takes forever to put together. And the reason why I say this is because this video is the full Black Ops timeline. At least so far. Now, as I mentioned, not every game we're going to talk about here is going to be a Black Ops game, but just most of them. So we need to get a little bit of backstory on a specific character, and to do that, we need to look at a game by the name of Call of Duty World at War. Specifically, starting in September of 1942 in Stalingrad. We play as a character by the name of Dmitry Petrenko. We wake up in a blood-filled fountain in Stalingrad where we run into another Russian soldier by the name of Viktor Reznov. Our goal during this mission is to hunt down and kill Heinrich Amsel, who is of course a German general. You fight through the town and eventually work your way to where you're sitting above him with a sniper, where you eventually accomplish your goal. Now, of course, the character that we're following here is Viktor Reznov, and jumping forward 3 years, we go to the end of World War II in 1945. So on April 28th, 1945, Dmitry Petrenko and Viktor Reznov regroup with the Red Army, and in doing so, they storm the Reich, taking it back from Germany.
As long as you live, the heart of this army can never be broken.
Things will change, my friend. As heroes, we will return to Russia's embrace.
But that wasn't the last thing in World War II, because of a mission in Black Ops 1 called Project Nova. On October 29th, 1945, Reznov, alongside Dmitry Petrenko, were on a mission in a very cold area to find Dragovich and Kravchenko. And they do, and eventually receives orders to capture Frederick Steiner, specifically alive. If they were to disobey these orders and kill Steiner, they would be killed themselves. Now, I could do an entire video on this mission alone, but I'm going to keep it brief. Eventually, they make their way onto a ship and find Nova 6 gas inside the boat. This time, Dragovich orders Reznov to be put inside and to be a guinea pig to test the gas on. In the other chamber beside him, Dmitry Petrenko is inside, and they use the gas on him. Reznov watches as Dmitry is taken down and completely and utterly destroyed by Nova 6 gas. However, before Reznov's chamber filled with gas, British commandos storm onto the ship, saving Reznov, and they are able to escape. At the time, destroying all of the Nova 6 gas on the boat. However, Dragovich, Kravchenko, and Steiner all escape as well. And even though they destroyed all of the gas on the ship, Reznov still warns that as long as Steiner is alive, they can reproduce Nova 6 gas, and nobody is safe. So as I mentioned, that took place in the year 1945, at the end of World War II. And yes, that mission did take place in Black Ops 1, but the rest of the Black Ops 1 story actually takes place in the 1960s. Specifically starting out on April 17th, 1961 in the Bay of Pigs invasion. Mason, Woods, and Bowman go in an operation called Operation 40 during the Bay of Pigs invasion. Their job is one thing and one thing alone: assassinate Fidel Castro. And they do so, seemingly, except for one big problem. It's a fake. It's a body double. It is not actually Fidel Castro. So they go in, and when they're escaping, they finally get to an airstrip. However, there's a problem. The airstrip is blocked. So Mason jumps out of the plane, destroys the blockade, and when he does so, he is unfortunately captured by the Red Army and taken to Vorkuta prison. Mason is then held captive in Vorkuta prison for over 2 years, all the while being tortured and tampered with and brainwashed by none other than Nikita Dragovich, Frederick Steiner, Kravchenko, all putting a numbers sequence inside his head. However, at the same time, he meets a fellow soldier, one from Russia, by the name, you may recognize it, Viktor Reznov, and together they mount an escape for Vorkuta prison. They work their way through the prison yard, and by the very end, they end up escaping on a train. Or I should say, Mason ends up escaping on the train. Viktor Reznov ends up driving off into the distance, and it's never really confirmed whether or not he was killed or not at this time. I do have some videos up on the channel about that one though, if you want to check it out. Now, after escaping from Vorkuta prison, he is then sent to meet with JFK, and in doing so, JFK emphasizes the importance of the people that he has dealt with, Nikita Dragovich, so on and so forth. However, we see Mason start to deteriorate, and we question whether or not his brainwashing has caused him to want to assassinate now JFK. And just a few weeks later, this is what actually happens in the real world and in the game story as well, and it's never really answered whether or not Mason was involved in this. However, it is heavily implied with the post-credit scene of Black Ops 1. But almost immediately after this encounter with JFK, Alex Mason is right back alongside Frank Woods hunting down the bad guys. But there is essentially a big 5-year gap at this point, bringing us to the year 1968. At this time, Frank Woods, their handler Jason Hudson, and Mason go into Vietnam to do several different things, to hunt down Dragovich, Kravchenko, and Frederick Steiner and stop the spread of Nova 6 gas. They go through several missions of doing so, and by the very end of this, Frank Woods ends up jumping out of the window with Kravchenko and goes missing. And actually goes missing for quite some time, but let's let Frank Woods describe it.
Kravchenko, when I sliced that bastard open, it saved everyone's ass. But he comes to first. Boom. Welcome to the Hanoi Hilton. 6 months later, they shipped me over to Da Nang. And this fucking place made the Hilton look good. Lost 17 of my group. By 72, it was just me. I was not gonna die in a fucking swamp!
Now, while Frank Woods is captured here, Alex Mason is meanwhile going to somewhere by the name of Rebirth Island, an island where they are producing the Nova 6 gas, going in to hunt down Frederick Steiner. And by the very end, we see seemingly Viktor Reznov, who we thought died in Vorkuta, assassinating Frederick Steiner.
Your evil has claimed the lives of many good men. No longer.
Killing me will not stop Nova.
I do not care about Nova. My name is Viktor Reznov. And I will have my revenge.
However, that was absolutely not the case, because in this circumstance, Mason is completely daydreaming, is brainwashed to the fact that he is Viktor Reznov and he is the one assassinating Frederick Steiner. He kills him, takes him out, and seemingly Nova 6 gas can no longer be reproduced. At least for now. We'll come back to that one. This brings us back to where the game started, the interrogation room. Once again, this is happening in the year 1968. All the while, Mason is interrogated, as we find out, by Jason Hudson and Weaver. They are trying to figure out what these number sequences put into his head by Dragovich actually mean. And what we find out is that Dragovich has stationed a sleeper agent in every single state across the United States, including one of them being Alex Mason. But because he's so strong-headed, they are able to decode this. They tell him that Reznov has been dead the entire time, and they want to know what the numbers actually mean. And what this ends up leading them to is something by the name of the Rusalka. This is the numbers broadcast station found in the Gulf of Mexico. So the squad goes out, and upon getting there, they end up finding that it is also the home of Nikita Dragovich. They go in, they take out Dragovich, and therefore the numbers sequence stops, and all of these sleeper agents being controlled through Dragovich are no longer an issue. They save the day before the two of them actually escape. Now, as Frank Woods so kindly just mentioned, he was held captive in Da Nang till the year 1972, but where things pick up next is in the mid-70s, during a game on the PS Vita called Black Ops Declassified. So during this time, we know of several missions that Woods, Mason, and Hudson went on, spanning from Vietnam, Germany, and even Mount Yamantau, which we're going to come back to in a minute. But these missions span from the year 1975 to 1979. With one exception. And again, we need a minute for that one. But essentially, these are just secret missions that this crew went on throughout the 70s. And moving forward, gives us some background information on what they were doing for the CIA. So this brings us to Black Ops Cold War, which the campaign actually takes place over a very short period of time in 1981. So in January of 1981, Alex Mason, Frank Woods, and a new character by the name of Russell Adler are going after a target by the name of Qasim Javadi and Arash Kadivar, questioning them on their role in the Iran hostage crisis, eventually running into Qasim Javadi, telling him the location of Arash within Turkey. They go there to an airstrip where they kind of take out some soldiers and eventually get some information on Arash, and he boasts that Perseus was responsible for the entire thing, but not just the entire thing, pretty much everything. Now at this time, Russell Adler is able to find a wounded soldier on the airstrip. We'll call him Bell. And what they do with him is take him back to their base and use Project MK Ultra to brainwash him and use him for information on Perseus because they believe that Bell has ties to Perseus. At the same time, Ronald Reagan gives the green light to Russell Adler, Frank Woods, and Alex Mason to stop at no expenses in hunting down, finding, and eliminating Perseus altogether. Now, Russell Adler's crew, including Bell, go on several different missions. They infiltrate a Spetsnaz facility and find out about something called Operation Greenlight, where neutron bombs have been planted in every European major city. They also go to Mount Yamantau, remember how I mentioned that one before, and infiltrate Nikita Dragovic's base and destroy his information revolving around sleeper agents. Yes, the same sleeper agents that we saw within Black Ops 1. When they go to retrieve this list, they find out that Perseus already has access to it. The crew also infiltrates the KGB headquarters, and in doing so make their way into a meeting where we not only see Krevchenko for the first time since Black Ops 1, we also see another character by the name of Imran Zakhaev, a major player and bad guy within the Modern Warfare universe. This was when the Call of Duty universe all started to come together and create the cinematic universe. Now, just for the sake of this video, we are only going to touch on the parts of the Modern Warfare storyline that directly impact Black Ops, and one of which is the addition of Imran Zakhaev. Now, in the canon ending to the game, Bell ends up betraying Perseus and telling the good guys, Russell Adler, Frank Woods, everyone else, the location of Perseus's headquarters, which they are able to disrupt and stop them from, well, greenlighting Operation Greenlight and blowing up the entire world. However, the interesting part comes from the non-canonical ending, when we actually get to speak to Perseus and we find out that Perseus is not just one man, but rather an ideal, or a group, or, if you will, an army.
And to think, after all this time, they still believe I'm Perseus. As if Perseus could ever be an individual working alone. So American.
Now, with Perseus dead, someone comes to take over, but first, between the year 1981 and 1984, when the post-campaign story actually happened in Black Ops Cold War, there was one more event that took place. In the year 1982. Once again, this happened in Black Ops Declassified, where Frank Woods and Alex Mason go on a mission within Nicaragua. A mission to actually go in and assassinate someone by the name of Jose Luis Menendez, the leader of the Menendez drug cartel. His son would be Raul Menendez, who would escape from this attack and actually be one of the catalysts for his future in this story. But we'll get to that in a minute. So the next portion of the Black Ops Cold War story takes place in the year 1984, when a new player comes in, someone by the name of Stitch. Now, he is interesting, not only as he takes over kind of as the leader role of Perseus, but also he used to work with Frederick Steiner on Rebirth Island. And in fact, he knows how to make Nova 6 gas. And he has big plans, because not only does he make Nova 6 gas, he also had access to Mount Yamantau, where he gets access to the numbers sequence and the sleeper agents, and has big plans to broadcast this across the world. In fact, at one point, he even kidnaps Russell Adler to brainwash him, but it proved that Russell Adler's mental will was far too strong. He completely disrupts Stitch's plans, but not before he is able to release the broadcast sequence across the world. However, Russell Adler, Frank Woods, Alex Mason, Hudson all get the upper hand and end up coming back and getting revenge on Stitch in the end.
Do what you will. Finish what you started on Rebirth Island. My broadcast was complete. I have changed the world, Adler. In ways you can't even imagine.
We then jump forward 2 years later to 1986, and this is the beginning of the events of Black Ops 2. And at this point, Alex Mason has retired from the CIA to spend more time with his son, David Mason. Again, he will come into play later on. However, he is then approached once again by Jason Hudson, telling him that his best friend, Frank Woods, has been captured and he needs help. So Alex Mason goes to Angola to get information on what has happened with Frank Woods. He finds out that Frank Woods is in a shipping container on the Cubango River. So Alex Mason goes in and saves him, and we find out that he was captured by someone by the name of Raul Menendez. Now, just a couple interesting things about this. First of all, we have no idea how Raul Menendez captured Frank Woods, what he was doing when he got captured, and to this day, that is still a mystery waiting to be answered. But on top of that, we have Raul Menendez. After his father's death that we talked about in Black Ops Declassified, he slowly began to take over the Menendez cartel, this time not starting with drugs like his father, but rather being a weapons dealer. So the CIA moves in to take out Raul Menendez, going into Nicaragua. Now, when they get there, Raul Menendez is alongside his sister, Josefina. And at this time, they carry out an attack on the compound to assassinate Raul Menendez. Eventually, when they get there, Frank Woods alongside Alex Mason move in, but when Frank Woods gets there, he goes into a rage, angry at Menendez for being captured, as we saw before. He gets pissed and ends up throwing a grenade into one of the bedrooms. This bedroom just so happens to have Raul Menendez's sister, Josefina, inside. And needless to say, Menendez is angry. So years later, in the year 1989, during the American Panama City invasion, Frank Woods and Alex Mason are there, working alongside Manuel Noriega. At one point, they seemingly have a captive, and over the radio, Jason Hudson says that the captive is none other than Raul Menendez, telling Frank Woods to take the shot. But what Frank Woods doesn't know is that Alex Mason has actually been captured, and Raul Menendez is coercing Hudson to tell him that it is Menendez under that hood. But as we find out, it was not Menendez.
What are you looking so smug about? The fuck is going on? What's going on here? No. Mason!
Fool.
You bastard!
Menendez!
And in one of the darkest scenes out of any Call of Duty, Raul Menendez goes over to David Mason and tells him that his life is going to be full of misery, and then asks Hudson whether he wants to die or whether he wants Frank Woods to die. Hudson is the one that takes it for the team. And with this, Raul Menendez tells Frank Woods that his life is going to be so miserable and so full of loss that it is going to be more virtuous to him to watch Frank Woods suffer and let him live than to kill him in that moment. So then we move into the year 1991. This is where the next Black Ops game is going to take place, Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Now, as of right now, we don't know too much about this game, aside from the fact that it takes place in the year 1991, and at this time, Frank Woods is looking for a mole, specifically a mole within the CIA. Also, the mole that gave up the Panama City invasion and ended up getting his friend, Alex Mason, either shot or brutally wounded. We will come to that in a little bit. We also know that Russell Adler is the suspected mole within the CIA. That's essentially all that we know as of now, and yeah, it's going to take place in 91, in between the events of the Black Ops games. Speaking of which, we are now going back to Black Ops 2. There is a very brief part of this game that actually takes place in the year 2014, and that is a part from Raul Menendez. At this time, he finds a organization known as Cortes Die. It's an organization to spur controversy and create distrust within the government. Now, this may sound familiar, as a very similar thing is going on right now in the events with Cerberus in Call of Duty Black Ops 6, which may or may not be tied together. We'll have to find out in the future. But that happened in the year 2014. However, the rest of Black Ops 2 actually takes place in the year 2025. So starting in Black Ops 2, David Mason, yes, Alex Mason's son, goes to a retirement home to seek out and find Frank Woods. Why? Because he has questions about Raul Menendez. Why? Well, in 2014, a militant movement called Cortes Die was founded and led by a charismatic leader known as Odysseus. He hid his identity, but as we now know, that person is none other than Raul Menendez. They staged cyber attacks and did all of these things, and this was all done because of Menendez's hate for the West and what Woods and the CIA had done to him in the past. So eventually, David Mason goes in and they try to get into one of Cortes Die's compound. They learn about something that Menendez is doing using quantum entanglement and the element known as Celerium to do a powerful computer virus. Believe it or not, that's going to come into play in the future of the Call of Duty story later. You'll see what I'm talking about. But at this point, they have a kidnapped hacker by the name of Chloe Lynch, codename Karma. But David Mason goes in and they rescue her from Raul Menendez. And from information given by her and other things, including information given by Frank Woods, they are able to track down Menendez to Yemen, at which point they are able to get him onto an aircraft carrier by the name of USS Barack Obama. But turns out this was all a setup. Menendez was a step ahead of them, and he actually uses that Celerium virus that we talked about before to hack onto the government signals and be able to control the entire American drone fleet. Now, why does he do this? Well, at the same time in Los Angeles, there's a G20 summit going on with a bunch of different leaders from around the world. He is setting the drones on that area. But regardless of this, David Mason tracks down Raul Menendez and eventually captures him. Now, in Black Ops 2, there are actually multiple endings, and it was never confirmed by devs which one was the canon ending. And one of them, you kill Raul Menendez, and the other one, he is taken prisoner. So that is one thing that is different. But aside from that, the other big thing that changes based off of the ending is what happens with Alex Mason. In one ending, when we go back to the Panama invasion, Frank Woods shoots Alex Mason in the head and he is just dead. That is it, plain and simple. That is one potential option. The other one is that when this happened, Frank Woods only shot him in the knee. And by the very end, we find out that Alex Mason has actually been alive this entire time from the year 1989 to 2025, but has been in hiding. And at the end of Black Ops 2, gets reunited with his son.
Do not enter. I swear to God, I will shove this wheelchair right up your ass. Hey, Woods. You look like hammered shit. You stay right there. Mason, I shot you. Turns out you're a lousy shot. My ass. Where the fuck have you been for 30 years?
David Mason for Sergeant Woods.
Another Mason?
Fuck. Secure the building.
Hey, kid.
Jesus,
Come on,
Frank.
introduce you to somebody. Al, this is Dave.
Dave.
How you doing?
This is your dad.
Dad. What the fuck?
Oh, you got a couple of fucking broads. Work this shit out on your own. Need some smokes.
You still got that scar? You made me proud that day. I fell. Yeah. But you got back up.
So that brings us to the end of Black Ops 2, and again, we don't know what the canon ending is, and hopefully in Black Ops 6 we get some information letting us know what went on in reality with Alex Mason. But our story once again picks up 20 years later, this time in the year 2045. Now this is Black Ops 4, and technically this game does not have a campaign, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have a story. You see, in Black Ops 4, there's a story about someone by the name of Savannah Mason Myers, who happens to be Alex Mason's granddaughter. Now, she is an eccentric billionaire. I think actually she's the world's first trillionaire as the story goes. And she has this idea of making a specialist program, taking these soldiers and turning them into super soldiers, whether that be fitting them with prosthetics, giving them upgraded gear, or even putting in a direct neural interface. She trains and upgrades these soldiers to make them the best soldiers possible. As it turns out though, Savannah had a sister by the name of Jessica Mason. And as it turns out, Savannah turned on her when she thought Savannah was taking things too far. So Savannah put a stop to Jessica, made her get captured, set her up. But as it turns out, Jessica didn't die. And she gets in contact with the rest of the specialists underneath Savannah, and they all turn on her by the very end. There isn't much more to this story as there was no campaign, but this is the story that we know. But there is one other thing. Savannah created a brand new type of soldier as well, something by the name of archetypes, taking the DNA from dead or alive people and turning them, multiplying them into further soldiers. And that is the actual story of Blackout. Then we have Black Ops 3. This game takes place 40 years after Black Ops 2 ended. So in other words, 2065. Now, this game is incredibly confusing and takes a minor degree in physics to actually fully understand. In the description, I will link my, I think, 30 to 40 minute long video going over the description of what happened in that game. But to keep it short, after the events of Black Ops 2, countries started to develop their militaries and specifically anti-air defense more and more because of the drone attacks caused by Raul Menendez. And if you still don't believe me that the games are related, have a listen to this.
Essential supplies are low.
How are you still holding on?
You can thank Raul Menendez.
What? Raul Menendez was a hypocritical egomaniac who thought he could make a better world by fucking everything up.
After the strikes of 25, all Winslow Accord nations had to abide by the Allied Drone Defense Act. Directed energy air defense systems must protect all major military, civilian, and industrial targets in allied nations. The deads are the only reason we are still here.
Maybe so, but I wouldn't thank Menendez. He was a prick who got what he deserved.
Also, lines in the world drew differently. For example, China and America actually grew to be allies and other countries separated differently. Also, most soldiers got implanted with something called a DNI, or a direct neural interface. But as it happens, these DNIs end up getting a virus by the name of Corvus. Now, essentially the story of the game is trying to stop this virus from killing all of the soldiers. In a very basic premise, that is what is going on in Black Ops 3. But as far as the Call of Duty timeline and what you need to know to make it make sense is this war going on in this game was caused by the war in Black Ops 2. It's just 40 years later. There's higher technology, there's direct neural interfaces, and there's a virus going around with it, which you need to solve, and that is what what the game is about. So this is the entire timeline of every Black Ops games, and a little bit of games outside of the Black Ops games as well. This should set you up for the story going into Black Ops 6. You know what happens before, you know what happens after. This game is taking place smack dab right in the middle, and I am very excited to see where it goes and what comes of this. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, these videos take a long time. If you enjoyed the video, you like the depth of it, it would be very much greatly appreciated if you could hit that like button, maybe subscribe to stay up to date on everything Call of Duty. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace out.
We are reaching for the stars.